Have you ever thought about starting a business, but you've maybe just gotten stuck right at the beginning, trying to work out, are you even building the right type of business? Who should you serve? What type of market should you be in? And how would you know if you're making the right decision? Well, if so, then stick around because you're going to love this video. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Goose, and over the last 4 years, I've built one of Australia's fastest growing companies. We've also been recognized as one of the best places to work in Australia. I've been able to do that whilst also traveling the world and living the life that I want. And my goal here is to help you create the life that you want through business, lifestyle design, and personal evolution. And in today's video, I'm going to be answering a question that was sent in to me from a guy named Brad. He sent to me, "Hey Goose, I found your page after coming across your YouTube channel, and I loved your story and the values you hold around helping others to achieve their dreams. I'm hoping you can help guide me towards mine. I'm a US veteran turned software engineer at Microsoft, and I have an unstoppable craving to create a business that helps others achieve their dreams." Well, that's a good start. "I'm 100% self-taught in every subject after high school, and I don't know what to do with my ambitions and knowledge to create an actionable business. I've devoured knowledge around lifestyle management, computer programming, and the wider tech world of data, DevOps, Agile, etc., physics, astronomy, business communication, fitness and dieting, financial markets, game design, politics, engineering, public speaking, and so much more. Amongst all the interesting topics I've studied, how do I find the right place to start a business in? And how do I land on a genuinely helpful business idea that people will want to participate in?" And Brad, that is such a good question. So firstly, you sound like a Renaissance man, which is absolutely perfect because being a generalist in all of those areas and really developing the thirst for knowledge actually is going to set you up to solve problems in a highly unique way, which is going to create more transformational value down the line. So firstly, good on you for having an insatiable curiosity and continuing to seek out and learn and grow. I really want to dig into this question because I think for anyone who's watching this video, there's some really great stuff to pull apart here. And most specifically, the question that Brad asked, which is, how do I find the right place to start a business in? And how do I land on a genuinely helpful business idea that people will want to participate in? So the first things you need to think about is really, how can you find the intersection between your passions, your skills, the market needs, and your ability to monetize? Now, we're going to dig into all of that because it's not just as simple as finding the intersection of those four things. You're going to need to find how that is also going to optimize life. Now, the first thing you need to do is pick your market. Now, ideally, you actually want to pick a market or an industry or a niche that is growing. So, for example, digital nomad, that is a growing trend as more people move to remote work. But you also might find things that are declining. So, once upon a time, the horse and carriage industry was growing, but then cars came along and the horse and carriage industry or market began to decline. And so what you want to do is you want to position yourself in a market that is growing so that the tailwinds can actually carry you forward. There was a great study by McKinsey that pointed out that the number one characteristic of the most successful businesses was participating in markets that were already growing. Now, of course, the most successful businesses had to have a competitive advantage and do all of these other things and perform in a different way and outperform their peers, but they also had to start in an industry that was growing. And you also want to pick a market that is big enough. Now, big enough is very, very, very subjective because it needs to be big enough to satisfy your goals with your business, but you do want to pick something that is big enough that is not so hokey that there's potentially only 2 or 3 people interested in it globally. Now, there is a great saying that the riches are in the niches, or as we would say in Australia, the riches are in the niches. But that is only kind of true. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you want to create a billion-dollar company that's going to change the world, going hyper niche, for example, that you only want to serve dentists in Sydney between the ages of 32 and 37 who drive BMWs, etc., etc. You can get so niche that you can get really clear on your target audience, but that target audience might be exceptionally small. Now, if you are building a business that has a specific lifestyle goal, maybe that is totally fine and that could be a really good way to go. But if you're trying to build a business that is exceptionally large, you actually might want to go a little bit more general. So for example, Dashdot, which is my primary company, is in the real estate sector. Now, the real estate industry is growing. More people are participating in real estate. The real estate market itself as a market cap is actually growing. The real estate industry in terms of real estate services is growing. Property investment as a segment is growing. And the whole real estate market, real estate is the largest asset class in the world. So you've got this massive opportunity to participate in an extremely large market where there's lots of active participants who want to get involved. Now, that's a great example of a large market that is growing. Another one, prop tech. So we have a technology business which is in the prop tech space. The prop tech industry is growing exceptionally fast. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing segments of the technology space globally as we start to see this intersection of technology and real estate, two growing industries, meet together to create something special. And so picking the market is also really about making sure it's something that you're interested in and passionate about. Scott Galloway is a famous marketing professor and a generally really smart dude. He is an advocate against following your passions. And To a certain degree, he is right. I don't think that success is born from just following your passions because, I might be really passionate about baking cakes, but I might be far more successful in building a real estate business, for example. And so you've got to find this balance between the things you're interested in and the things that can be economically viable towards your goals. And I think that therein lies a nuance that people really need to consider because you need to be passionate enough about it, but it doesn't have to be your life's work. Your life's work is a work of art. That's almost a creative pursuit, and that is okay. But typically, the better time to pursue that which is purely for the function of achieving the maximum potential of your art, to do that in a way that's not necessarily tied to the economic outcome. So what I mean by that is you can actually pursue that regardless of what the economic situation is or what the financial gain is. Now, that being said, you've got to be passionate enough about it that you can stick with it. In fact, I would argue that it's less about passion and it's more about obsession. So for example, in the real estate sector, I'm actually not that passionate about real estate. It's quite interesting. We've built one of the largest and most successful real estate investment companies in Australia, and I am not a property nerd. I don't obsess over real estate every day. I don't spend my weekends looking through real estate listings. I'm not that interested in it. What I'm really interested in is the problem solving and the uniqueness around the market and how we can continuously unlock and unpack how this market works and what kind of drives it and what that can mean for consumers. So I'm really passionate about that, and I'm passionate enough about the curiosity to become obsessed. Now, the reason I say you need to become obsessed is because if you plan on being in business for a while, which is in fact primarily a prerequisite for success. Again, there are some examples where people go from $0 to $1 billion company in like 12 months or whatever, or $100 million revenue in 3 years. They are by far the exception and not the rule. Primarily, if you want to be successful in business, it's a game of longevity. It's about how well can you stick with it. Now, of course, you want to go faster, you can do all these kind of things, but it's also about the stick-to-itiveness of it. So you've actually got to be able to play the long game, and in order to do that, it has to satisfy a couple of really key things. You're going to be curious enough about it, and you're going to be obsessed enough about it for it to be interesting, for you to be able to think about non-stop for a really long period of time. Because regardless of what business you're in, you need to be obsessed. It doesn't matter whether maybe you're building an online community. You need to be obsessed with, how do I build the best community for the people that I'm trying to serve? If you want to build a new technology product that solves something in the financial sector, you need to be obsessed with how do we solve this really, really specific problem? Even if you're in the education space, you want to be obsessed with how do you solve the education needs for the specific market you are trying to serve. And so picking something that you're going to be really, really interested in and passionate about and obsessed with is great, but it also doesn't need to be your life's work. It doesn't need to be your life's passion. Those two things can be different. And in fact, I might argue that it's important for those two things to be different, because whilst it's important to be obsessed, at some point, you need to realize that you are not your business and your business is not you. Now, in the early stages, when you're just starting up, it's actually really useful to blend those two things together. You're the business is you, it's all you think about, it's all you do, and you're just forcing this thing into existence. But at some point, you're going to need to separate those two. And that's really healthy. And that's actually going to be necessary for you to unlock levels of happiness and fulfillment and freedom that are going to be able to carry you through to the next level and allow you to play a longer game. Now, if you have specifically stitched your life's work to your business, you can actually find a situation where perhaps you're getting burnt out with the business, and then you're actually starting to feel like you're burnt out with your life's purpose, which actually could cause more dissonance. And so I'd argue that it's good to be passionate about it, but it doesn't have to be your life's work. And potentially it's helpful and healthy to keep some things that are there for interest that you might want to pursue outside of your business. And so going through this, let's say you've picked a market that is growing, that you can see has a good opportunity to carry your business forward. So you've got tailwinds and you're going to grow there. And it's big enough that it's going to be able to satisfy the needs of your business and your long-term objectives and your goals. It's going to be something that you're interested in, or that you can be obsessed about, or that you can be curious about, so you can play the long game, but it doesn't have to be your life's work. But there also needs to be a clear gap in the market. Now, the thing here is that a lot of people talk about finding an unsolved problem, like you need to try and invent a new solution. But I don't necessarily think that's true. That can be true, and that can be a really great way to create something that has yet to be created. but it's also finding an underserved segment. So for example, you might move to a town that doesn't have a good private waste management service. We've all seen them everywhere, skip bins for hire. You might move somewhere and there's no skip bins for hire in that town. And you go, wow, that's really interesting, because I've been other places and I've seen really successful skip bin companies. In fact, if you do some research, you'll find that there are many, many, centimillionaires that are created in the skip bin and waste disposal industry. It's wild because it's such a boring industry that most people don't think about it. However, if you go somewhere and you just identify, hey, this market isn't being served, that's an opportunity. You don't need to invent a new type of skip bin or come up with a new skip bin management process. You can just say, oh, that thing worked over there, yet no one's doing it here yet. Cool, I'll just build that thing. And so that's an opportunity for you to then just find an underserved market. But then of course the other thing is to actually see something that maybe people have never even identified as being a problem and then solving that too. Now that one is actually more of a recipe for creating $1 billion company, but to build a successful business, do that, you just need to find a market that needs to be served by something that you can identify with, which can be really, really useful. Another great way to identify a gap in the market is to combine your passions and interests in a unique way that has yet to be combined, or in fact is still an underserved segment. So for example, just going back to Brad, who submitted the question, his interests are lifestyle management, computer programming, physics, astronomy, business communication, fitness, financial markets, game design, politics, engineering, public speaking, and more. Now, there could be a really interesting segment there for computer programmers who are looking for help with fitness and lifestyle management, and you could create some products around that. Now, we'll talk about business models in a minute, but that actually might be an interesting way to combine things. Blending different industries and industry knowledge is actually a really, really good way to get accelerated growth. Another great way to do that is to actually look at what's working in some industries. For example, how are they achieving growth, sales, marketing, all of this kind of stuff, and seeing if you can apply it to a different industry. So for example, we did that when we entered into the real estate space. When we started Dashdot in 2019, we were told the only way to grow the type of business we were in was to go and seek referrals, to go and take coffees to real estate agents, asking them if they could send us some clients, and mortgage brokers, and saying, oh, please, hey, I'll bring you some coffee and I'll be your friend. Can you send us some clients? And I just thought, that's rubbish. I said, what a terrible way to grow a business. And so we looked at what other industries were doing. So we looked at specifically what the info product and coaching industries were doing, which was a lot of digital online marketing. And we said, okay, well, it seems to work there. Plus we get far more leverage and more scalability. Let's do it that way. And at the time when we started doing that, nobody else in our industry was doing that. And that allowed us to accelerate really, really, really quickly. Now, it didn't take long for other people to see what we were doing and start to catch up. And so you've got to continuously be innovating, but seeking to try and find those opportunities that exist elsewhere and going, well, how can we transfer these between industries actually can give you a competitive advantage as well. So when you're picking your market and trying to work out where to start, you can actually think about how you can blend some of these ideas together. Again, this is going to depend on what you want your business to be, which is probably a good time to actually start talking about what are you trying to optimize for? Because the problem here is also the opportunity. You can pretty much create any business that you want as you see fit. The problem is actually working out how would you know if it's the right business? Is it the right business for you? So working out what are your goals? Now, are you trying to optimize for growth and exit? Like, do you want to build something that's going to be really valuable so you can exit it in like 3 to 5 years? Are you optimizing for cash flow? Are you optimizing for lifestyle? That will denote a very specific approach to business, a type of business model, all of that kind of stuff. What are you actually really trying to build? Because I see a lot of business owners who don't have a clear idea of what it is they're trying to create. We get this idea that it's like, let's just make it bigger. Bigger is better, but bigger is not always better. Because, for example, if you have a goal that I want to be in business because I really want to have an impact on people, but I am personally interested in generating $1 million net income for myself every year. So you want $1 million income and you want to help people. That's cool. So that actually could be a relatively small coaching business or online business or community or some other kind of program where you can support people and help them grow, where you get your financial needs met. Perhaps you want to start a business that only requires that you work 20 hours a week or something like that, and it's more of a lifestyle design in that context. That is going to specifically mean you're going to choose a specific type of business that's going to allow that. If you want to maximize for growth and exit and you want to go, how do I build $1 billion company as fast as possible? Then you're going to need to really, really clearly think around what is required to do that. And in fact, do you actually want to do the things that are required to do that? So in order to do that, you're going to need to choose the right business model in the right industry with the right exit multiples where there's enough demand for acquisition, and you're probably going to need to get capital to go fast. And in fact, profit is probably not going to be the key thing that you're going to be looking at in that first instance. So trying to work out what type of business model you create based around your specific goals, because it's very easy for us as business owners to get lost in this kind of like idea that you need to achieve something tremendously massive in order to have worth. We see on social media, and we just get fed all this stuff all the time around all these people that are making $100 million companies, $200 million companies, $1 billion companies, all of this kind of stuff. And we go, okay, that's what success looks like. I need to do that in order to be successful. And it's like, well, what if you don't? I mean, I was talking to a business owner, a friend of mine the other day, and he's growing a really successful business. Last year, he did, I think it was $800,000 profit after he took out a salary for him and his wife, which is pretty good. And yet he was still talking to me about how does he get to roughly 5 times the size he is, because he had this idea that if he gets there, that's when he's going to have more freedom and more fun and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, dude, what if you just didn't grow your business anymore and just actually stabilized it, put better systems in place and unlocked more of your time, and you had $800,000 of profit? Would that be a good life? And the answer was yes. And so thinking about what you're trying to optimize for is really, really important too. And then also aligning that with your skills and abilities. So for example, I'm a relatively okay talker. So I don't mind talking and I don't mind communicating. So that's something that's valuable to me. If I didn't know how to communicate, then I might try and pick something that didn't require me to communicate. Also, if I've got really good computer programming skills, but I don't have very good sales skills, I might try and find something that I can build that has like a product-led growth strategy where I can rely on my computer programming and software engineering skills, and I don't have to worry about the sales component of it. I'll just build something that is going to sell itself through a product-led growth kind of a strategy. So picking something that's going to align with your skills as well as your business objectives is going to be really, really important. And I think this is kind of like where a lot of people can go wrong. Now, you can learn more skills. That's a really important thing to do as well. But that's going to then come back down to your interests and what you can become obsessed about. Because when we started Dashdot, I didn't know how to do sales or marketing. In fact, I didn't really know how to run a business. And what's really interesting is when I look back at my life before starting Dashdot, I had only ever been in business. I left school early, I started my own business, and I was in business all the way up until I was 30. And it wasn't until I started Dashdot that I realized I'd never really been running a business. I hadn't even been looking at my P&L. I didn't know what a profit and loss was. I didn't know how to manage money. If we had cash in a bank account, we considered that to be successful, and we just kind of ran the business that way. What's actually been really, really interesting over the last few weeks is I've spoken to a lot of business owners who are actually in that position right now where they're like they're not aware of what their monthly operating expenses are or any of these kind of things. And that's okay, because you can learn these skills. You can learn financial management, you can learn sales and marketing, you can learn stuff, but you've got to have an interest in it. And so when we started Dashdot, I didn't really have any experience in the real estate sector, but I was really interested in learning. I had to get qualifications and stuff in order to be able to do that as well. I didn't really know how to run a business, but I was really interested in learning. I didn't really know how to generate demand and do sales and marketing, but I was really interested in learning. Now, part of that interest was because we absolutely needed to, because when we started the business, we had no money and we couldn't even afford food, and we walk around the supermarket eating food off the shelves. So there was a real need for me to learn how to do sales and marketing, and same with Gabby. And we did that because there was a drive. So you can learn your way to kind of overcome these kind of things, but you have to have an interest in it, and you've got to be prepared to do that. So this is all the kind of things that you need to be thinking about when choosing how to pick the right market. There is no one correct answer. There are answers that are going to be more correct to you based on all of the things that I've just talked about. Picking an industry that is growing, picking an industry that is big enough to suit your needs, which goes back then to the business model and the goals. Because if your goal is to create $1 million a year, $1 million a year business, you don't need a very big market. And perhaps you can pick a very niche audience that you can serve very specifically. Perhaps it is creating a coaching business for computer programmers who are interested in politics, but want to know how to become better, become fitter and healthier and diet better. Maybe there's something you can do there that's super, super niche that's going to serve your needs. Or if you want to create $1 billion thing, you've actually got to zoom out. Now, just on the markets thing, there are 3 perennial markets: health, wealth, and relationships. And then everything falls within that. So you get to kind of go, okay, what industry, what kind of like segment do I want to play in? You can also then try and create a new opportunity or find a new market segment by blending your own separate different passions that you're interested in. So to create that new opportunity, you've got to decide what type of business do you want to build and what are you optimizing for? Is it growth and exit value? Is it lifestyle? Is it cash flow? What's the kind of business that you want and why? And to what size do you want to grow it? Because that's also going to dictate how you think about structuring the business and what you need to do there. By the way, not every business needs to be scalable, right? So everyone talks about scalability and growth, but scalability specifically is if you can grow in a way that your revenue increases in a non-linear fashion to your expenses, which means that as it grows, the profit margin should actually get better, not worse or stay the same. That's kind of how you think about scalability. It's not just can I grow it? Growability is different to scalability, but you also don't need to build a business that's hyper scalable. There's no point choosing an idea that you're not going to be able to stick at for a long time. Like all of the returns that you're going to get, whether they be spiritual, emotional, financial, any of that kind of stuff, they're going to compound over time and they're going to be exponential. So the first leg of your journey, typically the first few years, you're not really going to see the massive outcome that you're hoping for. Then all of a sudden, bang, you're going to go from here to here. And so you need to be able to kind of stick in the game for a long time. And the longer you can stick in it, the better the outcome you can get. Now, once you have identified your market, the market that you want to play in and the people you want to serve in that market and why, there's only three things that you need to consider: traffic, conversion, and product. You need to have an inbound source of attention. Now, that could come through social media, it could come through buying leads, it could come through doing paid ads, but you need to have a way to get people who are interested in the product that you're going to create. You need to be able to bring them forward. You need to have a conversion mechanism. Now, that could be having a sales team, but it doesn't need to be having a sales team. You could just say, well, the conversion mechanism for my business is going to be a checkout page online. Now, just to be clear, just to use an example of like borrowing from other industries, a lot of people assume that things like high ticket services need to have a sales call, but they don't necessarily need to have a sales call. You may want them to have a sales call and it may lead to higher conversions, but also you've also still then got to manage a sales team and build a sales team and have all of this stuff. You could sell high ticket services and just have a checkout page and have no sales team and speak to no one. And you could have an application process, which is fully digital and fully automated, and they could sell into a high ticket service. If that's what you want to do, you might have an interest in creating content. Maybe that's something you're really passionate about. You love sharing, you love creating, you love doing all that kind of stuff. So potentially your traffic source could be related to content marketing. Or you could absolutely despise the idea of doing content and you could say, look, I just want to get traffic from somewhere. So maybe you can buy lists or maybe you could do partnerships or whatever. It's like, how do you get the opportunity to you? So have a think of all of the ways that you might be able to find your opportunity. Who is your target market? Where are they? And how can you get access to them? One of my favorite mechanisms is paid ads. I love paid ads because I love the science of it. I love that it's measurable. I love that it's specific. I love that it's optimizable. I love that you have control. But of course, one of the problems with that is it's very platform oriented. Facebook, for example, could shut down your ads account at any given point in time. So there's always risks, and it's always a good idea to have multiple traffic sources. But you need to work out how are you going to get traffic? How are you then going to convert that traffic? And then what are they going to be converting into? Now, a lot of business owners make the mistake of being artists. So they'll think about the product or service only, and they'll think, I'm going to be the best financial planner in the world. And it's going to be, when people get my financial plans, they're going to be so empowered and so enriched, and it's going to be so awesome. They're just artists. And then they don't think about the traffic and the conversion. What I would encourage you to think about is think about all of these things as equals. You have to create a great product or service. It has to actually solve the problems of the people that you are trying to solve for. Otherwise, your business is going to go backwards and it will never amount to much. So if you've solved for the traffic and the conversion piece and your business still sucks, look at the product. So you've got to think about how can you really develop something that is going to be tremendously valuable to the user, the consumer, the client, the customer, whatever it is for you. You've got to think about where you're going to get the traffic from, and then what is your conversion mechanism going to be. They're the only three things really in business. So you've got to really think through what type of business do you want to build? How is that business going to serve you and your goals? And then how are you going to get the traffic for it? How are you going to convert that traffic? And then what are they going to be converting into that's going to deliver them a whole bunch of value? And if you can do those things, these questions are actually going to start to lead you to find the answers that you need. And again, remember, there is no one right answer. Pick one thing, stick to it, and keep going with that until it can start to grow on its own. And then only once you've developed enough systems to be able to give you some bandwidth and some space back, can you then say, okay, well, what else am I interested in? So for example, I am in that position right now where I said, well, what else am I interested in? And so I started a newsletter. And that to me was a combination of my interests, i.e. I like writing and I like business. And also I really like the model. And so that's a great example where I was able to start something off to the side where I could kind of pursue that as like just a little, like a hobby that could turn into something interesting later on. But again, I only did that when we're doing, well north of 8 figures right now, and we've got a really decent team in place. We've got about 80 employees across our two businesses. And so I had to get to a point that I could create the bandwidth to be able to say, okay, cool, what else am I interested in and how would I pursue those interests? If I tried to do that too early on, it would have probably spelled disaster for a whole bunch of things, or would be significantly less further along than we are today. So, Brad, I hope that helps answer your question. And for anybody else who's listening, who's thinking about how to get started, I hope that there's some answers in there that are going to help you as well. And of course, if you want to get answers to your questions as well, I can't answer all of them. I do get quite a lot of answers. I do a lot of questions sent to me all the time, but you can send me an email at hello@goosemcgrath.com. Send me an email, ask a question, and if you are very, very lucky, I may answer your question just like this in a YouTube video if I think that it is going to have a tremendous amount of value for other people in a similar position to yourself. And so I hope that's useful, and I hope this has helped you to unlock how you can try and get started or find the right idea or narrow your focus to getting to that point as well. And of course, if you've enjoyed this and you want more stuff like this, if you want to start to create a life of freedom, choice, and abundance through business, personal evolution, and lifestyle design, then I encourage you to sign up to the Wild Goose Chase newsletter. Do that in the link in the description. And of course, if you've enjoyed this, make sure you subscribe and share it with somebody else who you think might get benefit from it too. Until the next video, stay awesome and stay powerful, and I will see you soon.